I'm Jan.
And I'm Ronnie, and we are designing dishes.
Today we're going to make chicken stock. Everyone should learn how to make this. And this is a great recipe. When I was in college studying home economics, we made chicken stock, and I said, why? But I realized it's the basis of all our sauces, soups, and gravies.
And I remember when I was teaching home economics all those years, my students who went on to culinary college would come back home and say the most valuable lesson they learned from me was how to make stock. And that's probably because most of the finer restaurants make their stock. They don't use canned stock, and that's why the food tastes better in a five-star restaurant.
True.
Now, the chicken that we're going to use, basically you want to use a lot of bony parts of chicken. You can use a whole chicken if you want to, but I like to use chicken parts, and you'll see at the end how chicken parts are easier than a whole chicken. But bony parts, these are chicken backs and legs, and we have the chicken breast just for some white meat for later on to use in our soup.
One thing you don't want to use, Ronnie, is the liver.
Yeah.
Now, liver will disintegrate in the broth, and it will turn the broth a gray color. So that's one thing you don't want to use.
And it will also make the broth taste bitter, so yeah, definitely not. Now, here's one other trick that you can do if you want to release the flavor from the bones. You can take a cleaver, which looks like a real weapon here, and actually cut through the bones. It's a little noisy, and so we decided to cut it ahead of time. But yeah, cut through those bones to release the flavor. It will reduce your cooking time from 3 hours to maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours.
Well, that sounds good, but we also need some other flavor in our chicken stock, and that's vegetables. Now, these are rough cut vegetables. I've got 2 onions, and we left the skin on. The skin will add a lot of color and flavor to the stock. I used 2 large ribs of celery or 4 small, 2 carrots. Remember, everything is rough cut. We are going to be discarding all of this later. And we've got 8 sprigs of celery. Just leave that, parsley. Leave that whole, and we will discard all of that later too.
And the herbs, if you want to hold that, because I've got chicken juice on my hands.
Right.
You can use fresh or dried herbs. Today we're using the dried herbs. We have a bay leaf and we have some dried thyme. The fresh is perfectly fine. Rosemary is great in here as well. And kind of any of the herbs that you feel fond of. Great to use. I think it's probably time for us to move over to the stove and get started on that stock. Okay, we're going to be adding our chicken parts. And you notice there is no water in the stock pot. We're going to be adding the water after we add the vegetables and so forth, because we want to make sure that we cover our chicken. So now, with water that is. So now we're going to add our onions. We're going to add our celery, add our carrots, and add our parsley. And now is when we're going to cover this with water. Now I'm going to shake this just a little bit to condense this down, and then I'm going to add water. And again, it's probably going to be about 10 to 12 cups of water, but that's going to depend upon your stock pot. If it's a very tall, skinny stock pot, you may need less water. If it's a real broad, open stock pot, you may need more water. Whoops, I'm making a mess here.
That's all right.
It's this pitcher that belongs to you.
I know.
It's not me.
I guess it's my pitcher.
It
Sorry.
has nothing to do with the cook. Okay, we want about a ½ inch of water over the top of the chicken, and then we're going to turn the heat on to high. We're going to bring that to a boil, and actually we're going to put a lid on it and bring this to a boil, and then after it comes to a boil, we'll come back and show you what's going on. Okay, our stock looks like it's boiling, and yes, it is indeed. We're going to add our aromatics in there, and also I wanted to tell you why we started this stock in cold water a few minutes ago. If you start in cold water, it will again release the flavors from your bones more rapidly. If you start it in hot water, it tends to seal the bones up, kind of like when you put a steak on the grill and you want to sear the outside, so the juices will remain inside the steak. So the same thing happens here. Start in cold water, and then it will release the juices. Now we're going to reduce this down to low, and we're going to put the lid back on. We're going to let it cook for about a half hour and then come back and take a look at it.
Okay, you can see we're cooking our stock and it's at the 30-minute point. Around the edges and around some of the vegetables, you can see there is a scum or froth starting to form. We want to get rid of this. The reason is this is protein or blood that has accumulated from around the bone and the meat, and this will make our stock cloudy. Every 30 minutes for the next 2.5 hours, I'm going to check and see if there's any scum or froth and get rid of that. I'm not going to stir anything at this point, and it looks great.
Stock has been cooking for about 3 hours. And remember at the beginning of the video I told you we were going to deal with chicken parts instead of the whole bird? Well, it's because it's easier to scoop out the chicken parts than it is the whole big old bird. So we're going to take out some parts, especially the parts that we're going to be using, like the chicken breast, the chicken legs. We're going to use those for something else.
I think I'm going to tell them what we're going to use it for. We're going to use it for the gumbo that we're going to be showing you how to make.
Yeah, that's on an upcoming video real soon. And I think with this last piece right here, we are good to go on the chicken. If you want to take that, Jan.
Sure.
And then we're going to strain the stock. Okay, we're going to ladle through a colander and a cheesecloth the remainder of our chicken. And at some point here I'm going to pour it, but I do want to use the ladle to get some of the larger chunks out. Look at those nice onions. Remember that skin? That was yellow. Now it's nice and red. So it's given off a lot of nice color since it turned red in the process of simmering. I think I'm just about ready to pour this in. And you want to take that, Jan?
Sure.
Now, when you're pouring something that's hot, you always want to make sure you pour it away from you rather than towards you. Because if it splashes, you don't want to splash yourself. And just checking to make sure that we're not going to overflow this bowl. I've done that before.
I've done that too.
You're pouring like crazy. And all of a sudden you look and you go, whoops, my bowl is running over. So you do want to check that. Now, now we're going to press the solid contents that we have here in the stock. Try to get some of the juices to extract and to run down through the cheesecloth. This will probably take a couple minutes for the juice to drain down through the cheesecloth. And the purpose of that cheesecloth, by the way, is to help get rid of any particles that are in here and those dried herbs that we use that were, at the time was actually ground time, so this will get rid of that. It'll give us a clearer stock to work with in the end.
And you can find cheesecloths at most grocery stores or like a Bed Bath & Beyond, places like that.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so
Looks good, Ronnie.
I can do a little bit more pressing here. And then we're ready to put this back over into the stock pot. And here we have our beautiful golden chicken broth.
What a great color. Doesn't
Yeah.
it look great?
Looks
Oh,
ready to, I could drink it right now.
yeah, I know.
Okay. Okay, if you recall at the very beginning we did not add salt and pepper. The reason you don't add salt and pepper to your broth when you're cooking it is because you don't know how much evaporation there's going to be in the process of cooking. So now we're going to add our salt and pepper to season, to taste. And I never measure it. I never know how much I'm putting in because I like everything salty and my mother likes no salt at all. So, you know, everybody has their own preference. So season with salt and pepper now, and now you would do your tasting with your tasting spoon. If you add salt and pepper in the beginning and you get a lot of evaporation, you might have the Dead Sea when you're done with this. Okay, so I think we're probably...
We are done.
We're done. Done with the chicken broth.
So thanks for joining us. If you have any comments, we are on YouTube, of course. That's how you're watching us. So give us a comment. If you want to email us, we're at designingdishes@gmail.com. And we're now on Facebook, Designing Dishes. See you next time. I'm Jan.
And I'm Ronnie.